everybody. If you are looking for a podcast episode that is going to make you feel less stressed and explain how to actually reduce stress in your body and rewire your nervous system, you are in the right place. In this episode, I am joined by tapping expert Jessica Ortner, who's been on the show before and has been a favorite, for a powerful experiential session using EFT, emotional freedom techniques, otherwise known as tapping. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or stuck in patterns you can't seem to think your way out of, this episode will give you a tool you can use in the moment. Jessica explains our nervous system, explains tapping, and then walks us through a guided tapping sequence, which will calm your nervous system, reduce stress, and rewire emotional patterns that keep you looping in anxiety or overwhelm. I actually did it with her and felt better, not just in the session, but actually for the rest of the day. And I slept better that night as well. This isn't just a conversation. You'll have the opportunity to follow along and feel the shift in real time. Now, what you may want to do, since this is audio, is you may want to quickly Google EFT tapping points. She explains them and walks you through, so you definitely can do it just listening. But if you're more of a visual person, you can either go to thetappingsolution.com or you can just Google EFT tapping points and a bunch of images will come up. Let me tell you a little bit more about Jessica. She is a stress reduction expert and one of the leading voices teaching EFT tapping, which is a revolutionary self-soothing technique that's totally free that combines ancient Chinese acupressure and modern psychology. It's been proven to reduce cortisol, making it an easy tool to manage the stress of our life. Along with her brothers, Nick and Alex, she has a new book out, which we talk about, called Rewired, and it's actually coming out towards the end of April, but it's available for pre-order now. I highly suggest you grab your copy today. It explains tapping, but even more, I think, usefully, it gives you so many scripts and so many ways to actually rewire your brain and nervous system, because as I've said on the show, many, many times, we cannot do that with thought alone. Now, if you are trying to reduce stress, you probably are told you shouldn't drink coffee and you should keep yourself really hydrated. What if you really love coffee and haven't found an electrolyte that you really love? Well, I have the answer. It is Kaizen coffee and electrolytes. This is my new favorite brand. Let me tell you about their coffee. First of all, it is third-party tested for mold, heavy metals, and glyphosate. Now, you know, a lot of coffee has those things, and if you're using one of those little K-cups in one of those pods, as handy as that is, you're going to have mold, and you're putting it through a plastic thing, right? So no bueno. You want a better choice. It's organic coffee. It's a mushroom blend, so greater than a 6-to-1 fruiting body mushroom extracts, sea moss for minerals, and it tastes great. I really love it, and it mixes and blends so well. And they also have a great brand of electrolytes. Most electrolytes are crap, even the ones that you see all over the place. I highly recommend their electrolytes. They're formulated with sea moss and taurine, and it really will help you hydrate deeply, restore minerals where your body needs them most for real energy, clarity, and recovery. You know, we really cannot get what we need from our water today, especially if you use filtered water, and you need to replenish. I actually use 2 packs a day because I burn through minerals pretty quickly. So check out their coffee, check out their electrolytes. You can subscribe and save. Through my URL, you get a bit of a discount if you go to christinehassler.com/coffee. Now, even if you don't want the coffee, you just want the electrolytes, same URL, christinehassler/coffee. And in case you need to be reminded on how to spell coffee, it's 2 F's and 2 E's. All right, and now on to my fantastic conversation with Jessica Ortner. Jessica, welcome back to the show. I'm so happy to have you.
I am a fan, hopefully now a friend, and
Yes.
I'm really happy to be here.
Well, I love the work that you've been up to for a really long time, and we're going to talk about a lot today. A lot of people may recognize your name and know you as like the tapping girl, the tapping queen. So let's start there because some people may not know what EFT and tapping is.
Let's talk about what exactly it is and why this has been so much of your life's work and passion for so many years.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I want to start by first talking about what the nervous system is, which I'm hearing everywhere.
Yes,
Everyone's
it's very
talking
trendy.
about. It's very trendy right now. And to understand how tapping works is to understand the nervous system. But then how do we understand the nervous system without it just being the trendy word? So the nervous system is this network of cells that communicate. It's through electrical or chemical signals. So that includes your brain, your spinal cord, all the nerves in your body. And they're constantly communicating, saying, are you safe? How you're feeling? And it's a two-way communication. So back in the day, it was all about the brain. And now we're finally shifting to understand the body and seeing that there's two ways of communicating. Your brain is communicating and your body is communicating. So what tapping is you're tapping on these specific points on your skin, and those are pressure sensitive nerve endings that send a direct signal to your brain. It's also called mechanoreceptors. So these aren't just random points. They're also seen in ancient Chinese acupressure points. These are areas, like I said, with an increased dense nerve endings. And so what you're doing when you're stimulating these acupressure points is you're sending this calming signal from your body to your brain. Because a lot of times we're getting a signal of danger from our brain to our body. And that might come from getting a bad email or seeing something on Instagram that triggers us. And our body begins to react. And many of us have heard this a lot, but I think it's important to go over the basics, because when we understand that our body is reacting for our benefit because it's trying to keep us safe, it opens the door to this new sense of compassion. The looping thoughts, the overthinking, the anxiety, it's not because we're broken. It's not because there's something wrong with us. It's because we're searching for safety. And there is a message from our brain to our body saying, we're not safe because we're having this reaction. And so what tends to happen is we get very much in our heads and we're searching for that safety through trying to get more certain, trying to do more, to figure things out. And when we can't predict the future and when we can't change the past, we tend to feel like we don't have control over how we're feeling. And so what you're doing with tapping is you're actually being aware of the thought that's creating the physical response. And now you're tapping. And that's like a dual signal. So your brain is going danger. But now, instead of just feeling danger, you are getting a message of safety with these nerve endings through your nervous system. So now your brain can take a step back and go, wait, am I safe? Am I in danger? How do I look at this? And it gives you this, it starts with this gap, this like moment to breathe where you don't feel hijacked by an emotion. And I came across tapping because I don't know if I was born anxious, but I don't have a memory of not being anxious in my childhood. I had a speech impediment as a kid. I had to stay back because I didn't know how to read in second grade. And so much of my life felt like anxiety was just always in the background, like this background noise. And the thing about living with anxiety is that you become so used to it that you don't know another way. It's like carrying a really heavy backpack and then like the first time you take it off, you're just like, whoa, I didn't even understand how heavy it was. Once it's off, you feel it. And that was my experience with tapping. Is my brother came to me, he goes, I saw Tony Robbins mentioned this thing. I saw an event, and I have two older brothers. They have pranked me so much in my life. Like as the younger sister, it's like every prank, and I'm so gullible and I always fall for it. And I was going through a hard time and my brother asked me to tap on my face. And I just gave him this look like, you have to be kidding. And he's like, no, I promise. And so I had such a physical release of anxiety. It wasn't in my brain, it was in my body. And that really was like the start of a journey, which, to be honest, I forgot about it for months and months until I was going through a breakup. I remembered like a few of the points. I didn't even know all of the points. I felt a shift. And that's when we went, okay, this is pretty amazing. And I share that story because my intention for our time together is that by the end of this time, people who are listening feel comfortable enough to do it, even if it's not perfect, because this is the tool that you want in your first aid kit. This is what you want to have when you feel like a panic attack is coming on, or you have to have a very difficult conversation and you feel your voice is trembling. This is that safety signal that can really save us in so many moments in our lives.
Yeah. I'm so glad you started with the nervous system because, like you said, it is very trendy. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around the nervous system, and people forget that it is your brain. It's like a huge part of it. So when we're talking about nervous system, we're talking about your thinking too, and those patterns of thought that get looped in your brain. And in the 22 years that I've been coaching people, a lot of people don't even realize that they're anxious. They just think they're overthinking. And so that hypervigilance pattern that so many of us can get into, that we think is giving us a sense of safety, because if I can manage everything, if I can predict outcomes, if I can think about everything, either worry or worst case scenarios or whatever it is, it gives me this like false sense of control. And we might not necessarily be aware of the anxiety in our body. So we might not be like, oh, I feel anxious. But I know a lot of my listeners can really relate to that overthinking as a way to stay safe. And that overthinking, we don't sometimes even realize what it does to our body. And that oftentimes we actually, like if we measured our heart rate or our breath or any of those things, we would present as anxious. And I'm finding like more and more people in our world today, with the amount of information we have, like who isn't anxious? Like honestly,
Yes.
I don't know many people, especially, entrepreneurs, people that have families, working in busy jobs, seeing everything that's happening in the world. We need more tools. And what I'd love to unpack next with you is, for you, was tapping enough, or did you also need therapy to explore your past? Or is this just the one tool that's always been in your toolbox that you've been able to rely on?
I was lucky because I found therapists who use tapping, and that's happening more and more, where a lot of practitioners are just combining it to the work that they're already doing. And one of the reasons that it's so powerful is that we're beginning to change the way that we understand memories. So in the past, we thought a memory was solid. Something happened to you and that's what happened to you. And now we're realizing that we interpret memories, that memories actually can shift. It's why the same thing can happen to the same people at the same time and they recall it differently. We have different experiences. And so a part of therapy is going back and looking at some of those moments that might have established a certain pattern. So when you go back to a memory, what we're beginning to realize is that memories you can edit. It's called memory reconsolidation. So every time you look back at your past and you have a moment, it's like opening the file. And in that moment, you can edit it. But most of us feel the trigger and we think, why did that happen to me? And then we just save it the way that it was, and then we move on. One thing I've seen you do so beautifully with your clients is you open that file, it comes up, but now you're speaking to yourself differently. You're deciding how, at one point I listened and you had someone scream. That is part of using the nervous system, a physical thing, tapping similar, being able to physically let these things go, to be able to process them. So when we think of a memory and that file opens, now when we begin to stimulate these nerve endings, we tap on these acupressure points, we are sending that signal of safety. We're letting our body know that even though that happened, we are safe. And when we do that, it almost helps us go even deeper in our practice to really begin to not just logically know it wasn't my fault, or advocate for ourselves. Now you can physically feel that it's safe enough to do that you are safe, that even though that happened to you in the past, you in this moment are safe. And so then when you save that memory, you can look back and you don't have the same charge. The biggest surprise in my journey was how many young veterans were turning to tapping and going to our app, because many of them were saying that they'd come from, I heard a lot from Iraq and Afghanistan, but I remember one time specifically a young veteran, this was maybe a decade ago when we first started, came back from Iraq and he was in Walmart, and just the busyness of the store triggered him. Now, in that moment, you can't run to your therapist and you can't meditate. You are completely hijacked with that fight or flight response. And so in that moment, he just began to tap. So here he is he's triggered and he's stimulating these nerve endings. He's tapping on these acupressure points. It's sending a calming signal to his brain. And suddenly his shoulders can relax a little more. He can catch his breath. He can reassociate with where he is. And what I love about this story is he shared with us in the email that as he was feeling better, another man in uniform came past him and just tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Keep tapping, it works."
Oh, wow.
And so what I love about tapping is that in those moments when you can't speak to your therapist, or meditation is amazing for resilience, but it's not amazing when it's 2 a.m. and you feel triggered.
Yes.
It's kind of that way to have that support in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you really have to involve the body, right? You have to get out of your head and do something that involves the body and involves the nervous system. So your brain gets different signals. And just telling yourself, I'm safe, there's nothing going on, or repeating some mantra, it doesn't do it. It doesn't hit at the level of the subconscious, at the level of the nervous system and the body, which all really go together. So people love this when you did this last time on the show. I think we've got enough of an overview. Would you be willing to take us through a tapping session so that people can actually experience it? Okay, cool.
I would love to. So I know most of everyone's listening. So I'm going to walk you through very quickly where the tapping points are. This is a very forgiving process. You can also find it on our website, thetappingsolution.com. But the first point is on the side of the hand. It's underneath your pinky on the fleshy part. And it doesn't matter what side of the body you tap on. So I'm just using 3 to 4 fingers and just stimulating the point on the side of the hand. The next one is the eyebrow point, and it's where the hair of your eyebrow begins. Some people get it wrong by just tapping in the middle of their forehead. The spot is really where the hair of your eyebrow begins.
Closest to your nose, right?
Closer to the bridge of your nose, exactly. Now follow the hair of your eyebrow till you find yourself on the side of the eye, still on the bone. And then we have underneath the eye, right on the bone, underneath the nose, underneath the mouth, and it's the crease between your lip and your chin. Then you have your collarbone. If you feel your collarbone, it's down an inch. I use both hands, but you could also use one hand and just tap on your chest.
So not the actual bone, under the bone.
Under the bone, about an inch from your collarbone. Then you have underneath the arm, and it's about a hand width from your armpit. For women, it tends to be where your bra strap lies. And if at any point, some people have trouble reaching this point, you could use your opposite hand and cross over. You can use the same one. And also, if this one's hard to reach, you can skip it and still get results with the rest of the points. Then you have the top of the head. So this is right on the crown of your head. Those are 9 points, and they go in an order. So the more that you do it, you'll get comfortable with where the points are, and you don't have to memorize new points every time. You're just going through the circle of points. But what I will say too is that notice what point feels the most comforting. And I find it actually changes in time. Sometimes it changes with what you're working on. But if you know the collarbone, like for example, the collarbone point for me is like, that's where I can really take a breath. That is such a great tool on its own. If you're suddenly feeling triggered, to just tap on one point as you breathe, you're sending that calming signal. So with that, let's have an experience together. Do not worry about doing it right. I know there's some people who are like, I need to see exactly where to do it. Just follow along, trust the process. And one of the things we do with tapping is we take a moment to acknowledge how we're feeling, because you want to be aware of the thought that's creating the physical reaction. Sometimes with tapping, you can say positive things, but if you're triggered and you start with the positive, what you're going to find is a part of you goes, I don't believe it. That's not true. It's like we have to weed before we plant. We have to give ourselves space for something better to land. And that starts with honoring how we're feeling in this very moment. And so I'm going to keep this very general, and I'm going to focus on just stress and tension. As we talked about earlier, there's nobody in this world who doesn't have us, we get caught up in the stress and the tension. So if you could repeat after me, and for those who are listening, repeat either in your mind or out loud. So tapping on the side of the hand, simply say, even though I'm holding this stress in my body, it's safe for me to relax. Even though there's so much uncertainty in my life, I honor how I feel. And I give my body permission to relax. Great. We're going to stay on this side of the hand point for one more phrase. Even though I'm feeling stressed, I acknowledge what I'm going through. And I let my body know that I am safe. Tapping on your eyebrow point, this stress. Side of the eye, everything I've been carrying. Under the eye, all of these responsibilities. Under the nose, all of this pressure. Under the mouth, all of this weight. Collarbone, I acknowledge what I've gone through. Under the arm, I acknowledge how I feel. Top of the head, and I am open to more ease. Eyebrow, even with all this pressure. Side of the eye, it's safe for me to rest. Under the eye, even with all this stress. Under the nose, it's safe for me to begin to let go. Under the mouth, I am more than these feelings. Collarbone, I am more than these thoughts. Under the arm, it is safe for me to relax. Top of the head, I am safe. Now take a nice deep breath in. And notice how that felt. Notice if your shoulders are dropping a little more. Sometimes when we give ourselves a moment to recognize how we feel, the intensity can go up before it settles. But here what we're doing is we're letting our body know, even with the pressure, even with the judgment, even with the criticism, I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. How did that feel for you, Christine?
That was so good. I muted myself, everybody, so I could go along. I love tapping. So it was so great to drop back into it and have it facilitated by you. It was very special. But so where I am in my life right now, and just such a good reminder for my system of like the both and, even though there is all this stuff, I am still safe. Yeah. I can still rest. I can still relax.
This past weekend, I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I invited some parents over from my 4-year-old's class to get to know them better. And there was a part of me that really wanted to cancel because, books coming out, there's a lot going on. But when you're a parent, you're like, you know what? There's other priorities bigger than work. So I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to host. It'll be great. And I found myself rage organizing. Have you ever done that before someone comes over? You're just like a crazy
I did it yesterday in my daughter's playroom because everything just felt so overwhelming. It was the one thing I could control. So I just was like, this playroom's driving me crazy.
Exactly.
And I was like, just with the tornado, but it looked great when I was done.
Yes. So I found myself rage organizing. And I also found myself, I checked in and I was like, I'm kind of holding my breath. I think sometimes when we realize when we're just kind of moving really fast and we're like a little bit out of breath. And I was like, ooh, what am I doing? What are you doing, Jess? Like, where are you going? And it's almost like stopping to recognize when the stress tornado takes over. And so I had 30 minutes. So, I have an amazing app. I have a book where you can follow a tapping meditation. But in this moment, I was like, I still want to organize because I still want the house to not look crazy when they walk in. So I'm putting things away, but now I'm using one hand and I'm tapping and I'm tapping. I am safe. I am here. All is well. I am safe. I am here. All is well. And it was like I had to remind my nervous system, even though there's things in the future that I might be nervous about, or I want to prepare, or I want to do, this moment is now. And I am safe to relax in this moment. A lot of times we give ourselves time to rest without resting, without telling our body, hey, you don't have to think about the future. You don't have to think about the past. And so just allowing myself to have that moment with one hand while I'm putting toys away was like, it just dropped me back in. And I tend to tap in the evenings because that's when, at the end of the night when the kids are sleeping, that's when everything comes up. And it's like giving myself 10 minutes. And what's incredible is, we talked a few years ago, and what's changed the most is the research and the understanding of like how this really works. And I think it's worth sharing because we're so busy. Sometimes we need to give ourselves the reminder of why am I going to figure out this tapping thing? And there have been over 300 studies on tapping, but
wow. Who does the studies usually?
All over the world. There's this one woman, Dr. Peta Stapleton in Australia, who has been the leader of not only doing research studies at the university, Bond University in Australia, but also collecting them because they're happening all over the world. But one of the biggest studies, the first study happened with a gentleman, Dr. Dawson Church, and he measured cortisol levels before and after tapping. Every time I listen to a podcast about heart health, about brain health, about hormones, every expert is saying, reduce stress, reduce everything, because cortisol impacts every part of your body, including your brain. And the first study was measuring before and after tapping, and cortisol dropped by 24%, which was a massive number. He called the lab to recheck it. Actually, the lab called him saying that they wanted to run it again. Then years later, the same study happened in a university setting at Bond University in Australia, and it was a 43% drop.
Wow.
Average 43% drop in cortisol. There have now been MRI studies. There was an incredible MRI study that showed the brain before and after tapping. And this study was done with women who were struggling with food cravings. All of them were considered to be overweight. This was a big struggle in their life. And when it comes to food and it comes to craving, there is an emotional aspect to it. There is this feeling of not having control. And they did tapping, and they showed in the MRI machine, they first showed these women photos of their cravings. And so just by looking, and we all know this, even just listening, if I say, think about your craving, French fries, chocolate, whatever it is, it tends to rise when we're exposed to it, even a photo or description. These women looked at these photos, and you can see the activity in their brain. You could see it kind of lighting up like fireworks. They did tapping consistently for 4 weeks. They came back. Not only were they saying that they felt so calm that they didn't have that craving, they put them back in the MRI machine. They showed them those same photos, and their brain is not lighting up the same way. So not only are they saying, I feel like I'm calmer, I have control now, they shows in the brain a change in activity. So it's so exciting to see this. And then the last bit that's been very exciting is that we have an app called the Tapping Solution app. And in tapping, we measure before and after 0 to 10, just to see your anxiety, is it going down, to make sure it's working. We did this for customers so they could track their progress. What we did not realize was that from a distance, now we have data points. So we've had 23 million tapping meditations played. 18 million of them have had data points of before and after. And the results that we're seeing with anxiety is a drop of almost 40% in under 9 minutes of tapping. Now suddenly, Yale is looking at us, Columbia is looking at us. What's the other one? There's another university, I don't remember. But now, because our data set is so big, and I don't know of any data set on a mental health tool like this in the world. And so now it's really gaining traction to start some of those research with those bigger universities. So I predict that in the next 5 years, you're going to be seeing this a lot more in hospitals, It's already been approved by the VA to be used by therapists. But I feel like this is a tool that every teacher should know, every hospital should know, every therapist should know if your client's going into a panic attack, how to help them. And every person should know because, yes, we have a book, we have an app, but it's free. I was just tapping in those moments when I was stressed.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. It's so exciting. And I think so relieving that something so simple can create such big effects for us. So a couple like logistical questions, because I know people are thinking these things. Do your eyes need to be open or closed when you're tapping?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'd like to answer something about the words.
Yes, that was my next question.
How do I know I'm saying? So in Dr. Peta Stapleton's studies, she used tapping with words and without words. And then like they also did a control group of like bogus points, like not the actual acupressure points. It's the tapping. It's not the words. It's the tapping that creates the result. If you suddenly get rear-ended and you're in a panic because, you just got into a crash, you tap in that moment because you already have the thought that you need to now send that safety signal to. The only reason we're saying words is so that we're not thinking about emptying the dishwasher or, something random. We're staying and we're allowing our mind to think of the thought that's creating the stress in order to send that calming signal. When we talked earlier about memory reconsolidation, even thinking about a memory in the past and tapping is sending that safety signal. You can visualize, you can think about it generally, or you could use words.
So let's say that you had a memory in your past where you were teased in front of the whole class or something like that. So you could go back to that memory and talk about it, about like, even though I feel everyone's looking at me and I'm, so embarrassed, I still love and accept myself or whatever it may be. And basically go back through that memory of like, I'm okay. I made it. All is well. I can relax. I can go back. Would you actually go back and rewire it and say new things? Like, I'm actually standing up for myself. I'm, saying I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever it may be. Should we like rewire it that way if we're thinking about childhood memories?
We can do that. And I want to kind of break that question apart because there's one aspect where people have heard me say, and you say, even though, this statement of starting with, even though, and saying, I acknowledge how I feel, or the traditional EFT was, I love and accept myself, which sometimes can be a very big leap for people. So I like to start with, I honor how I feel, or I accept how I feel. This is where the Chinese acupressure combines with the modern psychology, because we're realizing that I shouldn't feel this way, or pushing through, or I don't need to feel that way. That does not work.
No.
Your brain and your body need validation. You are having a fear response. By telling someone, no, you shouldn't feel that way, it doesn't lower that fear response. What lowers it is seeing that, is acknowledging it, is hearing it, and then being able to shift to something different. But without the acknowledgement, we're not getting there. We're getting stuck. We're avoiding it. So you start on the side of the hand, and traditionally you just do it 3 times, and you can say, even though this happened to me in the past, I accept myself and how I feel. And it could be that simple. I accept myself and how I feel. You can go back, you can tap on what happened, you can tell the story. You can pretend you're talking to a friend and you're walking them through what happened. I stood up there, it was my turn in the spelling bee, my mind went blank, and suddenly my best friend laughed. And I felt so betrayed. And so you can tap and you can begin to tell that story. That's already beginning to rewire it, because you're sending a safety signal. So you're already telling that little girl or that little boy, you're safe. Even though that happened, like, you're safe. You can go and you can combine this with saying, like, what do I need to say in that moment? You can also go back and just simply say, what do I need to hear? You are enough. It's not your fault. I'm older now. I'm wiser now. I'm choosing different friends. It's so much of the work that you do that's so wonderful with rewiring that you can just incorporate it. And I even invite listeners, if they're listening to this show, a lot of times you're listening to someone else's experience and you're being triggered because you're remembering your own experience. And so while you're thinking of your own experience, you can just be tapping on the points while listening taking that rewired language that you share and just incorporating it with the tapping.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great tool to just actually be able to not have just a trigger and nothing really to do with it. And yeah, I love that we're involving the body so much in this conversation. And the validation is so important. We were in our Rewired program, my inner child program last week. And I was coaching someone through an empty chair process, which is a technique I use for people to talk to their younger part. And I won't give the details because it's confidential in the group, but basically the child part was talking about what happened and how she felt. And when she moved back to the adult chair, she went into kind of reassurance. And I was like, time out. We're not there yet. That's actually not what the inner child needs. I want you to really drop in to validation. Tell her how much her feelings make sense, how much this reaction she's having to what happened in her family makes so much sense and is the appropriate reaction. And these feelings are really relevant and they matter. And I'm here to hold them with you. And it was when she moved back that the inner child finally felt she had a physical reaction in a positive way to what happened, because it is that validation. And I think this is where a lot of personal development, positive psychology misses the level of the subconscious, which the nervous system and the body are the language to the subconscious of wait, the goal isn't to change ourselves because then we're in judgment. Nothing heals in judgment. The goal is to really meet ourselves and validate those parts. And then, yeah, we can give ourselves a new experience. But if we don't feel met first, good luck shifting it, right?
Yes.
Then we're just trying to bypass.
The way I think it's helpful when we look at sabotage too, when we feel like we're trying so hard to get out of patterns and do things differently and we find ourselves back in the same place, is to begin looking at that experience as misguided self-love, that there is a part of you that does not feel safe to change. That is why we go back to those old behaviors, because they feel familiar to us and they feel safe. Sometimes pain feels safer than the unfamiliarity of trying to be happy, a new relationship, doing something different. And so the key is safety, is always to be able to tell ourselves we are safe. And it's part of expansion. So it's not, I think the biggest change I made in my life is when I stopped feeling like I needed to arrive somewhere. Back in the day, I always was like, well, one day when I never have any doubts, when I finally lose that extra weight and I finally do this and that, I had this fantasy of what arriving through self-help would be. And the moment I realized that my job is not to arrive, but to always meet myself where I am and reassure myself that I'm safe, that is when the expansion was incredible. And it continues. We have this new book out. Tony Robbins wrote the foreword, which is such a dream, and it feels really important and really exciting. And there's a part of me that's nervous and because it's expansion. And so it has to be it's safe to have good things, and it's safe to speak out and talk about what I'm passionate about. And it's safe. So for those who are listening, it's safe to want to make new friends. It's safe. It's the things that we desire, what we need the most is to constantly remind ourselves it's safe to try. It's safe to make mistakes. It's safe to figure it out as we go.
Right. And this is where we've got to put our logical brain and executive functioning aside, because our adult mind can go, of course it's safe to have a successful book. Of course it's safe to make friends. Of course it's safe to have money. Money would make me feel so much safer. But there's a part of you that disagrees with that, right? Because there's some wiring in there that got a little crossed. And you call the name of your book is Rewired. Why Rewired? Tell us how tapping is actually rewiring us.
Because it changes the reaction we have to a stimuli. So many of us, we have triggers. There's a story I share in the book early on. I started working with my brothers. We first made a documentary film together, and then we started this business. And there was this one day where I walk in, and I was living with Alex at the time, and Nick had stopped by, but I wasn't home at the time. I walk home, I get home, and they're having a meeting that's ending, and they're like, okay, we just decided. And there was steam coming out of my ears. I was like, you guys had a meeting without me? You decided something without me? I was furious. And they were like, whoa, 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 like you weren't here. Like I just happened to stop by and it like happened organically. Like, what is this? And I was so angry. And so that, it's kind of annoying, like personal responsibility with a family who knows all this stuff. But I did take a step back because my brother was like, this is not about what he's like, whatever this is not about this meeting. And I reflected and I thought, you know what? There's only been 2 Nintendo controllers. I'm not tall enough to play basketball with them. I'm not playing sports. They were the 2 who were always making the decisions. And I was a little sister who, if I wanted to be seen and heard, I had to yell and I had to be angry and I had to be loud.
Yeah.
I've always, I've always been looked at in my family dynamic as like the courageous one. Well, because courage was a thing that like I had to do to be seen because the boys were kind of this team, right? This is a little example, but it shows out we have certain family dynamics and then we start to see things. So my trigger was I'm being left out and I'm not being seen. And when I began to tap on just the hurt, and there were certain moments, like there was a moment, and this just shows it can be little things. It doesn't always have to be like these big traumas. We used to go to Thanksgiving and have to drive for 6 hours to see a great aunt. And I always got stuck on the floor. This was before we had to wear seatbelts. It was the 80s. Kids in seatbelts didn't exist. And I remember being like, I don't want to be lying down on the floor. And I was like, well, you're the youngest. You're always going to be the youngest. You're always going to be the smallest. You have to be on the floor. Okay. He's also like 11. So I don't blame him either.
Yeah.
And the point of all this is like, I could have lived my whole life always feeling like I was left out.
Yeah.
And it would have manifested, and it had manifested, not just with my brothers, but with friendships and other areas, because there's a trigger of being left out and not being enough. And so suddenly the world, you begin to manifest what needs to be healed. And it's why we all know that friend who dated the same guy with a different name. And you're like, how are you finding these guys? They're all exactly the same. Like we've all had that experience because we manifest the same experiences if we're not healing them. I would have continued to manifest feeling left out if I did not look at that trigger and begin to tap on that little girl who just felt like she was just always behind, always left out. Because I was able to do that, I was able to rewire my experience where now I'm not attracting that anymore. I don't see that anymore because I'm not seeing the world through that lens.
Right. I love this. Oh, well, speaking of little ones, how does tapping work for kids?
It works so great with kids. My mother she's retired now, but she was a school psychologist for 25 years. And when we first learned tapping and were using it as a family, she started to use it at the elementary school. And one thing she shared with me is that a lot of times kids have big feelings, but they don't know how to articulate it. And they also don't know where it's coming from. So if you sit with them and you ask them, well, how do you really feel? What's going on? Sometimes they can answer that, but sometimes they just can't. They don't have the words for it. And so to be able to tell them, all right, just be in your feeling. We're just going to tap on your collarbone point. And we call it the gorilla thump because that's, a gorilla thump. My brother has a book called Gorilla Thump and Bear Hugs. The bear hug is tapping underneath your arm. So allowing kids to have this feeling. I also, within our app, we have a card deck for kids. So the kids can kind of scroll through, pick a card at random. It turns over and it's a quick tap. It's just one round where they acknowledge how they feel. And then it goes to something more positive. And it's my niece, who's like 8 at the time, who's doing the tapping. And we get such great feedback from teachers and from parents who use it. So we have resources for kids, but also just on your own, this is what I'll say actually for kids. Do the tapping yourself because kids borrow your calm.
Yeah.
So I have this card deck and like what I'll do at night, because we have it in the app and we have a physical card deck for kids. I'll pick a card and I will tap. Even though it's hard to be different sometimes, I acknowledge it's safe to be me. And then it's like the round. And when my kids see me doing it, they'll be like, okay, now my turn. And then they'll pick a card and then I'll tap on them while I read the card. But even if your kid is resistant at first, the more they see you doing it in these moments, the more curious they become. And they really do borrow our calm. When we calm ourselves, it transfers to them whether they tap or not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have a very deeply feeling kid, highly sensitive. And so nervous system tools are essential. And I'm thinking I can tap for her, but I'm also thinking she can probably, because she's 4, as like your little one, she can probably start to, I mean, I'll have to model it, but she can probably start to do it. Something, I don't know if any parents would like this tip, but something that's always worked really well is if I do it on a doll. I'm like, oh, the baby's upset. Let's tap. And I do it on the doll, and then she'll pick it up that way too. But I think just arming our kids with these nervous system tools, like imagine for you, like maybe you would have been reading earlier, like if you had, and you seem to have done just fine. You've written multiple books, you're very successful, which is just reassuring for any parent that's super worried about their child right now. Like we're more resilient than sometimes we give ourselves credit for, but how amazing to have this tool at a young age, and especially, in any kind of stressful environment. So veteran, CEO, founder, hospice worker, parent, like there's just, I don't think anybody escapes stress. So the more we can learn to actually work with it rather than just try to suppress it, mask it, or bulldoze through it, which is really the only tool so many of us have. Wow, the better we all are. Yeah. This has been so great. Anything that I missed that you think is really important for people to know?
I hope that the biggest takeaway that people get from our time together is that when you begin to understand that there's something inside of you. We call it the nervous system. It's a trendy word, but there is something inside of you that all it wants to do is protect you. Mm-hmm. That's its number one goal. It's not to help you thrive. It's to keep you safe.
Right.
And when you understand that, there can be this level of compassion of there's nothing wrong with me. This is how I'm wired. And my only job is to reassure myself. The only job I have is to reassure myself that I'm enough, that I'm loved. That's all we're searching for, is that reassurance. And so often we spend our time looking everywhere else for that reassurance, when really the only way we ever truly feel it in our body is by giving it to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we can do it physically. We can actually do it in a way that our body can receive it and not just try to like think it. I think we're all really good thinkers. We need other tools in our toolbox.
Yes.
Okay. So what can people get from Rewired, the book that is coming out April 28th? Yeah.
April 28th, Rewired, forward by Tony Robbins. I'm really proud of this one.
I'm holding it in my hands. It's so pretty.
It's the first time I've ever written a book with my brothers. If you can write a book with your brothers and not murder them, it is a testament that the tools work. But we did have a wonderful time working on this together, and I'm very proud of it. And also in app or Android, we have the Tapping Solution app. You can there's a 14-day free trial to experience it, or if you just get in there, we have so many free tapping meditations on anxiety, resources for first responders that are always free, resources for teachers that are always free. So that's the Tapping Solution app on Android or Apple.
And I have that app, and you were in my ear every day during my pregnancy.
No way,
yeah.
Really?
Yes, because I had a miscarriage first, and then I got pregnant again. So I had a lot of anxiety about loss, and then it just got closer to birth, anxiety about the birth, and you were in my ear every single day during my pregnancy.
Well, I'm honored.
Yes. So thank you for that. And it really works. So check out the tools, everybody. The book is Rewire, the Tapping Solution. You can get, you said a free trial for how many days?
14 days.
14 days. That's pretty cool. On any of your app platforms. And go back and listen to the tapping again if you missed it, so that you can actually have the experience. And then,
And if you want a visual too, if you're on Instagram, you can just go to @TheTappingSolution or @Jessica Ortner. We have like a lot of quick taps. If you want to see where the points are, that's an easy reference. Or thetappingsolution.com. We have a lot of free resources there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you.